Once again, welcome to my YouTube channel, Livestock Products Technology. As you know, we are continuously dealing with fish processing and preservation, and in the last part, we have discussed about the utilization of fish processing byproducts. In the previous lecture, we have discussed in general as an overview what are the different fish processing byproducts, what is their composition, and how they can be used in different aspects like making the fish oil, or skin is used for leather, or using as a fertilizer, or making fish meal, or by fermentation, and sometime pharmaceutical use. So all the different aspect of use in general I have discussed in the previous lecture, but today I am going to discuss a few specific things about the processing of fish byproducts. So we will discuss mainly about processing of fish meal and fish oil, that is mainly prepared from non-edible fish or the other fish waste or byproducts. And the another important thing I am going to discuss is about the fish silage. Again, it is done by digesting and fermenting the fish as a final product for different purpose. So this is the two things I am going to discuss in details today. First, let us have an idea about the fish meal and fish oil. About 20% of the fish caught from different sources are processed into fish meal and fish oil, and mostly this is non-edible fish. Many fish which is not very suitable for human consumption, they are processed into fish meal and fish oil, which has got use both for human and livestock feeding. Mainly fish meal is used in poultry or pig production. So we all know fish meal is a very common ingredient in preparing the ration for poultry and pig production in the modern scientific farming. And the oil, if it is prepared from the good and healthy fish in a hygienic way, that can be used as a human supplement. However, if it is from the non-edible category or from the non-edible waste material, that is used in the tanning industry, that is the leather tanning, or in the soap, glycerol and other non-food products. So in a data 2015, it is shown that the total fish meal produced from fish waste is about 29% of the world fish meal production. That means much of the fish processing waste can also be processed into fish meal. Here we will see a brief idea about the fish meal and fish oil value chain. So for an example, here we can see the raw material. One of the common is anchovy fish, which is not normally commonly consumed for human. And then it undergoes processing. There will be cooking by high temperature, almost like a sterilization, and then there will be pressing to remove the oil and other watery part, and then this pressed portion is dried to make the meal. So finally the product is fish meal, which has got about 22% protein, so it is almost a dried meal, and the oil we can get even up to 3.5% of the weight. Then it goes to distribution through agents, through representatives, through brokers, or through direct distribution, and the final market is in the animal consumption, that is the animal feeding or livestock feeding, especially in poultry feeding and piggery. It's a very important ingredient for as a source of protein. Now we will talk about the preparation of fish meal. So as I said, fish meal is made by cooking, pressing, drying and grinding of fish, that is the non-edible category, or the fish processing waste. So they undergo cooking and sterilization, then pressing to remove the water and oil, then drying this solid part, and then grinding. And then the watery part is removed and the oil is separated. So most of the water and some of all of the oil is removed. then oil is separated and purified and used as a fish oil, which is also used in livestock feeding if it is from the waste source, and if it is from the good healthy hygienic meat, then it can go for human use as a supplement. So 4 or 5 tons of fish are needed to manufacture 1 ton of dry fish meal. That is the ratio of 4:1. So we are going to discuss more details. In the bottom we can see the industrial facilities for the cooking and sterilization, and then separating the liquid part and making the solid and drying and grinding. So we will see more. Here we can see the flow of processing of fish meal. The raw fish is going for cooking, and then the fat will be melted as oil, and then by pressing the solid part is separated. Then there will be evaporation and drying like a cake, and it is by grinding we can get fish meal, and the liquid part separated from which water is removed and we can get the oil. I am going to explain more in the next one. Here once again we can see the flow chart for processing fish meal, and later I am going to discuss every step more clearly. So we can see the raw material of different kind of fish. Non-edible can be the starting, or the fish processing waste can be the starting material. All this material sometime need to be broken. If it is big fish, we need to cut them and mince them in a big smaller pieces, and then it undergoes cooking or heating and sterilization. Then it becomes semi-digested and the fat will become liquid and a watery mixture will be there. This watery mixture is separated. From this the water part can be removed and we can get the oil, and the semi-solid part undergoes further pressing. Sometime we can use modern system like extraction system, in which the water and oil will be removed and the dried part undergo further drying, and then we can make the meal by grinding. Here we will discuss every step separately. Initially the fish, if it is raw fish or non-edible and large category, we need to make them smaller cuts, and then it will be loaded in a cooker for cooking. So this cooking is also a kind of rendering system which we have discussed earlier for byproduct processing in slaughterhouses. So this rendering is a kind of sterilization with steam. It will have a double jacketed vessel. The outer jacket will have the steam and the inner chamber will have the raw material. So this raw material will be cooked, protein will be coagulated, and much of the water will be mixed along with the melted fat coming from the fish. So a commercial cooker consists of a long steam jacketed cylinder in which the steam is injected. If it is directly injected, then it is called wet rendering, and if it is indirectly used in the outer chamber, then it is called dry rendering. After this, the next step is to remove the cooked materials and it undergo a pressing through which the liquid part is separated. That liquid contains both water and oil. So in this process, much of the water, 50 to 70% of the water can be removed and oil content reduced to about 4%. So this portion is conveyed through a perforated tube. Sometime we call percolating tank, or sometime it is done through a perforated tube, and then it will remove the liquid part when it goes under pressure through a screw conveyor. Now there is a step of pressing or centrifuging. The semi-solid part can be put into centrifuge to remove the further liquid oil part or moisture part, and then it becomes more dry and it undergoes further drying. Whereas the liquid part which we get already previously, water and oil, that can be done separated from the oil and water by centrifugation, and we can remove the pure oil portion. The semi-solid part which we get through centrifuge, that can undergo a final drying by a hot air up to a temperature of 200 degrees Celsius. Then it is passed over in a cylindrical drum. So this drying is done in a cylindrical drum with an temperature of about 200 degree Celsius. So one side we get the separated oil from which the water is removed, and the other side we get the semi-solid material which is dried, and then it undergoes grinding and packing. So these solid materials after drying will be broken in down, and any lumps and particles and bones that should be grinded through a grinding system, and finally it will be packed, and that becomes the fish meal. So here once again we can see the fish meal production plant, how the process flow is going. First there is a screw conveyor in which the raw material is loaded, and it is directly loading into a cooking vessel where it will be heated and sterilized, and then it undergoes a pressing in which the liquid part is separated and we get a semi-solid material. This semi-solid material undergoes a drying, and then it will be almost dehydrated, and then it will undergo a cooling, and then there will be a grinding, and finally we will get the fish meal. Now we will talk about another important product from fish waste or fish processing byproducts, that is the fish silage. First let us understand what is fish silage. So it is a product prepared from minced fish or other fish parts which is added with a preservative and stabilizing the mixture, and this is basically a liquid solution where proteins are pre-digested. So it's a process where fish material is pre-digested and preserved almost like a liquid. What is the advantage? The advantage is it is very simple, it does not require any huge investment, and product can be preserved for longer periods, even years. The waste problem can be converted into profit. So all the fish processing waste can be converted into useful products. Here briefly we can see that fish processing waste, how it can be made useful and valuable to make fish silage. The fish processing waste, we can grind it and then add acid and allow it to ferment, and allow by adding enzymes. So by this process there will be digestion and fermentation, and we can get a semi-solid digested material or almost liquid. That is what is fish silage. This can be used in fish feed, in animal feeding, and the oil can be extracted and used in making the aquatic feed materials. Here once again we can see a brief of silage production, which I am going to discuss more details later. So we can collect all the fish processing waste, including the viscera and other bony parts, heads, etc., which should be grinded or macerated and putting into a tank, and then later it will be undergoing the fermentation by the action of enzymes and other bacterial production, and finally we can adjust the pH when necessary and store it, and then it goes to the industry where it will be finding use in the livestock or aquatic feed production. Here we can see the raw material for making fish silage. It could be non-edible whole fish or spoiled fish. It could be parts of fish which is not suitable for eating, all the visceras or all the waste materials, only head, only guards, all the bony parts. So all such things are the raw material for making silage, and the condition of raw material, it could be fresh or it could be raw, stored properly. Now we will talk about the details of fish silage processing. So right side we can see that the process, that is the fish processing, from which the waste material comes, that undergoes a grinding, and it should be mixed thoroughly, and then we can add acid, and then by fermentation and enzymatic action it will be ready as silage, which can be stored in different kind of dumps. So it's a kind of fermented pickling and digestion of the fish proteins. So here the particle size, it should be small, maybe about 1 to 5 millimeter, to ensure that acid can penetrate all cells. And how the degradation happens, mainly by enzymatic degradation. So enzymes break down the proteins to peptides and amino acids, and because of the fermentation the pH will go down to 3.5 to 4 at a temperature of 5 to 4 degree Celsius. The kind of acid used, like organic acid, it could be formic acid, and the inorganic acid, which is of lower cost but will require a lower pH. So this is all about the processing of fish silage in a brief. Now about the equipments required for this silage making. One is the grinder, which will reduce the particle size by grinding so that we get small pieces, and then only the acid or preservative can enter inside the particle. The another important equipment is pump, which will move the raw material and circulate the raw material to ensure all particles are equally exposed to the acids and enzymes, and then only it will be transformed to fish silage. So grinder and pump are the two important equipments required for this processing. Here we can see a large commercial plant for making the fish silage. In the developed countries, it is a large industry. All the fish waste is integrated for processing into a fish silage through a well organized factory. The facilities and details are seen in this picture. So here we will see briefly about the requirements. One is the mixing tank, which is made of an acid resistant material, maybe modern plastic containers or fiberglass containers or stainless steel. And the storage tank is very important. That can be stable with pH of the product, resistant to corrosion because the pH is very acidic, it may undergo corrosion, and it can be galvanized materials should not be used. The galvanized materials should not be used, which lead to the development of some toxic components. So this is about the containers for making or storing fish silage. Now we will discuss some of the quality control measures. The quality firstly depends on the raw material. Secondly, the pH is important indicator. It should be highly acidic. And third is the effect of fish bones. So due to the fish processing, a lot of bones comes into the waste, and that bones has an important relation with the quality of the fish silage. So preferably separation of bones is an important criteria. If the level of bones are very high, then it will consume high amount of acid. So this can be removed from the tank on a regular basis. So if we remove the fish bones, then we can make a better quality of fish silage. Now we will discuss about the storage and quality assurance. So normally this fish silage can be stored in acid resistant containers. So nowadays there is high quality plastic or fiber containers can be used, or in the steel containers, and the shelf life of such silage can be for years. In the quality assurance, first thing is regular control, maintenance and cleaning of the equipment, regular steering of the silage and pH control. These are very important criteria for maintaining the quality or quality assurance. Then separation of oil is another important aspect. So after the digestion process, the fat and oil will be floating on the top of the silage. So this oil or fat can be removed by decantation, and it can be further preserved by adding antioxidants. Now about the utilization of silage. So it can be directly used as feed. It is relatively low in acidity. In case of pigs, by feeding the silage, we can have higher growth rates, improved health and reduced mortality. This can be mixed with other feed ingredients also, so it can act as a supplement for valuable amino acids or proteins. And this is just ready to be used, so it does not need any further processing. and retain all the nutritional and health benefits. So silage is having a very high value in the livestock feeding with a high quality nutritional value. The other utilization of silage use in pellet production and extruded feeds. So nowadays there are different pelleted or extruded feeds for fish farming or in the poultry farming. So there we can use this silage because it has got a very high level of free amino acids and peptides which are very good for growth and production performance. It has use as fertilizer because it is a very good source of nitrogen from the protein, and also it is a very good source of important minerals like phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium. Particularly when the bones are present in good amount, it becomes a very good source of all the minerals. And this can also be used in the irrigation process, maybe simply adding as a liquid of 5 to 10% in the irrigation, and that can be a very good way of fertilizers. So with this we are at the end of today's lecture. Today our main topic is processing of fish processing byproducts. So we have discussed two important aspects. One is preparation of fish meal. As we all know, fish meal is a very important and commonly used ingredients in the livestock feeding, especially poultry and piggery, and it can also be used in the fish production or fish farming in adding this fish meal or other silage in the fish pellets. So the other important byproduct we have discussed about silage. So fish meal is prepared either from the non-edible fish, the large fishes which are not suitable for human consumption, or the fish processing waste which can be processed into meal by heating, sterilization and drying and grinding. Side by side we get a liquid with oil and water. So oil is separated as fish oil, which is also having use in the different industry including feeding of livestock, other industry like soap, glycerol and other aspect. Similarly, the another important fish waste byproduct processing we have discussed, that is the silage. So here all the waste from head, stomach contents, viscera and other dead fish, condemned parts, all these things we can digest with acid and enzymes. Finally, we can get semi-solid digested protein that becomes a very useful ingredient for livestock feeding and other as a fertilizer. So we have discussed about these two. Thank you very much.